Welcome everyone, I'm Dr. Sam Spinelli, physical therapist with Cinnis Athletics. Today we're going to be talking about sustainable weight loss. In the first installment in this series, I went through a 30-day transformation timeline where I started off after having struggled with the initial parts of COVID, the lockdown, quarantine, everything associated with that, where I had a really hard time and I ended up gaining some weight and really fell off the track in regards to my training, my nutrition, pretty much everything. And I outlined some of the steps that I was going to do through that 30 days and what I would do to help make some transformation in the right direction. Those things really centered around a few main habits. Number one, my sleep. Aiming to get about 8 hours per night. My general activity level, so that was monitored through a step count where I was aiming for approximately 6,000 to 8,000 per day. Nutrition, where I was aiming to have about 1 gram per pound of body weight for protein. My vegetable intake, so trying to get that up to a higher degree, somewhere in the 6 to 8 range per day as a minimum. And then also trying to train every day to kick things into gear, not needing to necessarily do challenging workouts, but to do something physically active every day. Through that timeline, I had some good results. I decreased my overall body fat, a drop in my weight of about 8.8 pounds or 4 kilos over that 30-day timeline, which is a pretty good amount and something that I wanted to then see, would I keep it off over the next 60 days? So extending out to 90 days, how sustainable were those results? For anyone that's dieted previously, it's really common to see someone where they have some initial results and then across that next timeline, they start to either decrease and they don't make it back, or they decrease and then go through a yo-yo period of time where usually they start to get more extreme on each end, where they'll have an extreme weight loss and then an extreme weight gain. And instead, my goal was to have a reasonable amount of weight loss and then maintain and keep it off for a longer period of time, which we're at. Today is day 90. I just checked my weight on the scale, and from the end of the 30 days, I'm up about 1 pound. So from the start of the 30 days to now, I'm down a total of 7.8 pounds, but as a time since the end of the main focused period, I've gained about 1 pound. And I'd like to think that weight gain is primarily muscle because I've been continuing to train and pick up the training intensity and training more challenging, so hopefully that's muscle. But either way, I'm really happy with the overall results because I've tried to be very diligent about not doing any extreme measures, just sticking with these very basic sustainable measures. That way it'd be something that I could discuss and show how other people could implement them. Now, it's all well and dandy that I was able to make those changes and be able to maintain them, but what really matters more to most of you is going to be how can you do that? And that's what I really want to discuss now. In the first video in this series, I outlined a lot of really helpful tips that I'll put a link for in the description box down below, and I would encourage you to go and check that out. Today, I'm going to try and talk about some different ones that you can try to implement yourself, that you can see how they help to make your life a little bit easier, to make some healthier option choices that will make weight loss a little bit easier on you. Now, when it comes to weight loss, there's a few important things that we need to talk about. At the end of the day, one of the biggest determinants is, are you able to get into a relative caloric deficit? That means that the amount of input that you have is less than the amount of output. So essentially, you need to be eating less than you're burning. Now there's a lot that goes into that formula, and I'm not going to be trying to break down too much science in this video, but just outline some of the ways that we can manipulate that equation in our favor. So when we're talking about the input, the first side of that equation, one of the things that we can start to look at is how can we reduce how much total food we're eating without necessarily feeling like we're dieting. And a big part of that, in my experience, has been vegetable intake. I found that if I'm increasing the amount of total vegetables I take in a day, from the fiber and the total amount of food volume that it provides, I don't feel as hungry. One thing that I've done across this time that's been really helpful is starting to work on prepping some vegetables that I can just easily grab and put into different meals. At the start of each week, I go through and I chop up some different vegetables like broccoli and carrots, and I'm just able to go and open up a Tupperware container and toss them into different meals. And that's going to be either a meal where it's just those vegetables and maybe a dip like hummus, or it might be a more complex meal like a stir fry. By having these different options just prepared so that way you can just open your fridge, grab something fast, put it together, it reduces the time and effort that you have to think about these options, and also reduces the likelihood that you go to something else that would be fast and accessible, but maybe doesn't align with your goals as well. In addition to vegetables, more liquids can be really helpful to fill up your stomach as well. Drinking a lot more water can be beneficial. However, some people don't like the taste of water, some people get bored with it, and just then start to deviate to other options that might not be as good. What we can do instead is start to introduce different things to help increase how much water you're intaking without necessarily adding in a lot of caloric intake. Something like adding in a little bit of low-calorie juice and topping it up with water. That's something that I'll do myself, where I have a little bit of cranberry juice and then top it up with some water. Or maybe something like Crystal Light or different sorts of flavor additives that you can do a little bit of and then really don't impact you much from a caloric standpoint, but can provide a lot of ways for you to start to intake more liquids. That's one that, especially during the summer, can be extremely helpful, because sometimes we're dehydrated, we're gonna then start to think that we're hungry, when instead we just need to increase our overall fluid intake. Another aspect on the input side of the equation is gonna be your protein intake. Most people undereat how much protein they could have, particularly if you are completing resistance training and trying to lose weight. Both of those goals often align with a slightly higher increase in protein than the standard amount that's recommended in the RDA. During that 30-day period, I was looking to aim around 1 gram per pound of body weight, which is definitely a lot more than I was previously having. And I found it challenging at first, and since that time, there's been a few things that I've implemented that have been very successful for me, and I just wanted to share a few of them. One of the first tips I recommend to people is to consider adding in some protein options earlier in your day. And this could be either something like egg whites, it could be a protein shake, but some sort of protein option that you get in early in the day, as this has been found in research to be really helpful in reducing how much people eat later on through the day without necessarily having to create a mindful choice. It's just something that people naturally deviate to when they've had an increase in how much protein intake they have earlier on in the day. So something that I've done is where I start my day first thing early on, and I go and I have a protein shake really early, about 6 a.m. And it just helps to check off that I get in a starting amount of my protein. A second thing that I do is I usually go to some sort of a protein option later at night as well. And this for me has been either Greek yogurt or cottage cheese. Most of the time I've got a little bit of room left in how much protein I need to get by the end of the day, and this helps to shore it up, but it also provides me some protein that I can have overnight, which might be beneficial from a standpoint of helping to maintain my muscle mass. There's definitely some arguments we can make about that, but we do have some research that does agree with that. So it's because I wanted to really focus on maintaining my muscle mass and just reducing my fat mass, it's an option that I think is going to be beneficial for a lot of people who are in a similar category. Now, as we transition to the other side of that equation, the output, there's a few things that we can look at that I found to be really helpful. First up is increasing my general physical activity across the whole day. During that 30-day timeline, I was looking to increase my total step count from where I was at before, at around 4,400 per day, up to 6,000 to 8,000 as sort of my average. I was pretty successful with that for most of the month, being above 8,000 on an average. And from that time that I finished, I wanted to increase it a little bit higher. And since then, I've been around 9,000 to 9,500 as an average, working my way up comfortably to around 10,000 per day soon. And what I've done with that is I try to start off my day with a short walk, just about a 10 to 15 minute walk to get my body moving after sleeping, start to get my mind fresh, getting some fresh air. And then from there, I transition usually into my work day. And then I try to take a few more breaks throughout the day where I just go and have a 5 to 15 minute walk. And I find that it not only allows me to get more focused when I come back to work, but also helps me get in that step count, and it doesn't feel as tedious as if I was trying to go for a 30 to 45 minute walk later. And I found that just naturally, I'm able to break that up throughout the day and get in about 3 or 4 of those short walks. And it doesn't feel like it's impacting my day either, and being this long drawn out process. Something that I've changed since the end of that 30 days was reducing my total number of workouts in a week to now just usually 5, maybe 6. And on the other days where I'm not training, I then just do some additional light physical activity, whether it be maybe a hike, just go for a longer walk with my dogs, or go for a cycle with my daughter. And those are things that I've found to be really helpful to still get in some physical activity, but it makes me able to have better training days when I actually plan to train, and it doesn't feel like every day is a bit of a lull, where before, during that 30 days, I felt like some of my workouts were just meh. I would just show up and kind of go through the motion, whereas now they're much more planned, they're much more diligent, and they feel more like workouts. And it's something that I've found really beneficial for myself. Obviously, we are a fitness company, and if you need training plans, we do offer them. We have a lot of different options for people, whether you're training at home, training at a gym, if you have weights or you don't have weights, whatever you need, we have multiple options that are available to you, and you can find options for that down at the link below. You know, personally, I find that when I have a planned workout, it does help me, because if I just show up and kind of go through the motions of picking random things, I'll either A, miss things, or B, I'll choose things that I just really enjoy and not necessarily do the things I need to do. There's been a lot of times in my training where I've gone off plans and just, kind of done what I feel like. And when I reflect back on those afterwards, there have been some key beneficial things that I've neglected. And that's where having a plan really comes in helpful for me, at least. So that's my summary for the 90-day transformation and how you can make some sustainable weight loss changes. The biggest thing is choosing to make habits that you can implement that don't take considerable effort and you're able to just kind of naturally put into your life. Being able to do so will allow you to make them things you can carry forward for the long term and keep the weight off. For the next 30 days, I'm actually going to try to have another weight loss bout, but I'm going to be trying to do so by challenging a common narrative about foods that aren't healthy. So stay tuned for that. Make sure you like this video down below and subscribe so you see the next coming video. See you guys then.